Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another segment of Al-Islam Worldwide Ministry. As always, we'd like to begin with prayer. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Idina siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. We translate now from Abdullah Yusuf Ali's translation, the first chapter of the Quran, titled Al-Fatiha, the opening. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All praise belongs to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of all the systems of science. The merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, sole master on the day of judgment. Thee alone do we worship, and thee alone do we seek for aid and assistance. Guide us along the path that is straight, the path of those whom thou hast favored and bestowed thy grace, not those whose portion is wrath, or those who have earned your displeasure, nor of those who go astray. We say, Ameen, Sadaqallah al-Azim, God the Mighty spoke the truth. We'd like to welcome all of our viewers from around the United States of America and across the world. We say to you all, to the Muslims, Assalamu alaikum. And to our Christian viewers, peace be upon you. To our Jewish viewers, we say Shalom. And I'd like to begin by introducing our guest. To my right is Cam Nelson, Assalamu alaikum. To his right, welcome back, Ahmed MAJID, Assalamu alaikum. And directly in front of me, Lazette SALEEM. Assalamu alaikum. Our young student, ZARIA, welcome back. KARRIEM. Assalamu alaikum. TERESA Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum. And my friend, good friend here, Dr. RASHEED Abdullah. You want to give us our salute? Thank you, sir. And welcome to all of you all in America and around the United States, and around the world. This is our third segment. So let me tell you what the subject is: the Quran and Science, Part 3. But before we begin our presentation, let's have a moment of silent prayer. Lost another champion, civil rights champion, Congressman John Conyers in Michigan passed this week. So let's have a moment of silent prayer. Ameen. And our prayers go out to all of the victims. I haven't seen a much loss of life, thank Allah for that. But people are losing their properties in the wildfires out in California. So our prayers are with you, and we say God's speed be with you and God's mercy be on you. And it's very sad that you're having to lose your properties like that, but those things can be replaced as long as you have your life. So our prayers are with you that you all are safe out in California. Also, one other note I want to bring to your attention: the United States of America tracked down finally one of the most notorious murderers, killers, terrorists. They call him al-Baghdadi, and he went out the coward's way, blew himself up, and unfortunately killed 3 of his children. If the reports we're getting are telling us this. But one thing that was mispresented in the media, one presentation, was that somehow or another he was claiming, this is al-Baghdadi, that he was a descendant of Muhammad the Prophet, prayers and peace be upon our Prophet. Well, that is false. That's not true. And even if he made claims, and those claims are questionable, that his descendants are from the tribe of Quraysh. The tribe of Quraysh, all of the members during the time of Muhammad the Prophet's time, all of those people who were in that tribe, they weren't all necessarily related to each other. So just because a person belonged to a tribe or have an ancestor or descendant of the tribe doesn't necessarily mean that you're a family member of that tribe. And being a part of a tribe doesn't mean that you're righteous, because when you study the tribe of Quraysh before al-Islam, the Prophet, that same tribe, his same tribe, chased him out of Mecca. So I don't see any righteousness established to that tribe. and Allah says in the Quran that Muhammad, the Prophet, so this is for those of you all, the non-Muslim community, of course, and maybe some Muslims, but there is no rights of inheritance to prophethood, Khalifa, or anything like that based on your bloodline. So Allah says in the Quran, Muhammad is not the father of any of your men. So he didn't leave any physical offspring. Now, I know my Shiite brothers and sisters that Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, was the cousin and son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad. He was a family member. But Ali never claimed any succession, Allah be pleased with him, because he was Prophet Muhammad's cousin. And he never disputed with Abu Bakr, that is Ali. He never disputed with Abu Bakr when Abu Bakr became the first Khalifa. He didn't say, I object because I'm his cousin. No, he know this was unacceptable. And by the way, there is no, so for anybody who's coming up in the future, so you all know this, and a great majority of the Muslims know this now, there is no one person, individual that is called Khalifa for all the Muslims all over the world. Doesn't exist. The word in the Quran, Khalifa 10, actually is in the feminine form, and it's a property of all human beings on this earth. It means ruler, that God has made males and females leaders over ourselves to be leaders. And the word appears in the Quran and other places in the plural. Khulafa, more than one Khalifa. Khalaifa, and translated as inheritors, where God said, I've made all of you inheritors. Khalaifa fil ard, inheritors in the earth. So anytime any person jump up around the world like al-Baghdadi or whoever else and claim, oh, we're the caliphate and this is the caliphate, and then the news media picks it up, it's all misinformation. It has nothing to do with our religion, al-Islam. It has nothing to do with the life history of Muhammad the Prophet. So we just wanted to clear those issues up for you, because if you're not informed in the religion, people make claims all day long. And in fact, the behavior of this particular person, there's nothing in his behavior that reflects the life of Muhammad, the Quran, Islam. There's nothing in his behavior that was in his behavior that reflect that. So we wanted to clarify that. Now we're going to get to our questions right away. And before we start, Zaria, you have question 1, but before we do that, I want to read my opening statement from Imam Muhammad's book, Education, a Sacred Matter, commentary by Imam W.D. Muhammad, on our theme, the Quran and science. So I'm reading from page 56. Quote, Imam W.D. Muhammad. When you read the story of mankind, the beginning of our fathers, our family of human beings with Adam, God is introducing him as an intellect, not as a spiritual spook or something. He is an intellect, a wise brain. God made a creature with a wise, useful mind and brain, and then gave him the world that he could get the benefits of it, so that he could become very productive and make his life better on earth by using the wonderful things that God has locked up. Yes, they are locked up. Our knowledge and study has to bring them out. They are locked up in his creation. So in the Quran, we have the name for verses. Dr. Rashid asked this question last week. Ayat. It means signs. All verses are called ayat. And then God says, and there are signs in the heavens, meaning all that is in the sky are signs. Not just these signs. He calls this ayat. And he says, up in the sky, there are ayats. That is the plural for ayat. The plural for the Quran and also plural for the universe. God says, and in the skies above you are signs, ayat, as well as in yourselves, and all between heaven and earth. So God is telling us the same thing the Indians believe, and they did not have to have prophets come to them except from their own people. Indians have prophets. Do not think they do not. The Native Americans, they have prophets, and God says there never was a people that did not get a prophet. It means all the persons who guide people right and care about them, those people are the creation of God. He sent those people, he made those people for whoever they are serving. There are signs in the skies and everywhere. So the book, the Quran, is for us, our immediate life and guidance, and to take us and connect us with the bigger book outside. This is the book for Muslims to guide their life, to have them to understand their life firstly, and then guide their life and connect them with the big book, the universe. End quote, Imam W. Dean Muhammad. So we conclude there. So now for the questions tonight, Zaria, welcome back. So you get question number 1.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My question is, did Al-Islam have anything to do with the Renaissance in Europe?
Her question, if you didn't hear it, did Al-Islam, excellent question, did Al-Islam have anything to do with the Renaissance in Europe? Now, if you all don't know what Renaissance means, you can look it up, but Renaissance, long word, it means revival, rebirth, regeneration, renewal. And so her question is, did Al-Islam have anything to do with the rebirth of Europe and the sciences? So I'm going to go to this book, Zaria. We'll read from the Quran in it. I'm going to this book, Signs in the Heavens, by Dr. Ahmad Ahmed. And on page 22 and 23, so I'll start with page 22. He says here, Zaria, in the 700 years that followed the Prophet Muhammad's establishment of an Islamic community, the rational, practical, and egalitarian religion produced a civilization as bright as the corresponding civilization in Europe was dark. The sciences of the civilization which the Muslims inherited were not merely preserved, as American school books would have you believe, but digested, expanded upon, and they flowered into whole new sciences. Until about 800 CE, that's the Common Era, Western Europe was in the deepest pit of the Dark Ages. After Charlemagne's unsuccessful skirmishes against the Muslim civilization in Spain, Western Europe began to experience a cultural rebirth. Yet, European science remained insignificant until a stronger and more influential interaction with the Muslim world took place centuries later. In the 12th century, Europe was still in an unhappy state. The church was divided and the continent racked by warfare. The weaker of the two popes claiming authority at that time made a call to holy war, to a crusade against the Muslims. While the pope's actual motives in initiating the crusades are disputed, there's no doubt about the results. The other pope was eliminated, the bloodshed in Europe diminished, and during the absence of the fighting men, the church became the authority. The pope's plan to turn European turmoil against an external enemy eventually wrought an unanticipated consequence of historic proportions. It forced Europeans into contact with what they call an alien ideology and a civilization rich in scientific knowledge. The contact with Islamic civilization brought about a rebirth of interest in scientific thought in Europe. Europe's eventual conquest of the border regions of Spain and Italy sparked the Renaissance and the adoption of a number of Islamic ideas that directly conflicted with medieval notions, end quote. So that's the direct answer to your question. Now I'm going to go to the Quran, Zaria, chapter 55, verses 1 through 5. And in this chapter is titled Ar-Rahman, the merciful benefactor. The entire Quran gave birth to this Islamic sciences for the Muslims, the entire Quran. But this particular chapter 55, and I encourage our viewers and others to read the entire chapter, I encourage you to read chapter, because in the chapter for about 37 times it mentioned this refrain. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which of the two favors? Now listen carefully, because remember how I'm going to explain this now. Which of the two favors of your Lord will you deny twice? So Imam Muhammad, in explaining these two favors of God to mankind on earth, the spiritual sciences is a favor from God, and the social sciences, the rational sciences, these are God's two favors on mankind. He blessed us with guidance in religion, and he blessed us with the rational sciences to help us make a productive life in this world. So now, in chapter 55, verses 1 through 5. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ar-Rahman, the merciful benefactor. This is God. This is one of the names of Allah. Ar-Rahman, the merciful benefactor. Verse 2. Allama al-Qur'an. So this starts the Renaissance for the Arabs, for mankind in the 7th century, and for the then known world. And starts science, the whole process of sciences. Allama al-Qur'an. It is God who taught the Qur'an. Verse 3. Khalaqal insan, and created. Now I'm going to translate it this way because I understand the meaning. And created the Renaissance man. Yes. Created the Renaissance man. So that's Muhammad. Muhammad the prophet was the Renaissance man. He was the one that revitalized the sciences. But where did it come from? God says, Allama al-Qur'an. He taught the Qur'an. And the Qur'an, Khalaqal insan, created the Renaissance man. Created a new mind. Al-insan. Created a new intellect. And that intellect was created by the education from the Quran. Verse 4. Allamahul bayan. And that Renaissance man, Muhammad the prophet, praise and peace be upon him, he starts expressing the sciences from the Quran. He starts teaching the sciences to his companions, to his followers, turned on the new interests in knowledge and sciences. And they became so excited by the sciences of the Quran. And remember now, there were no classrooms, there were no schools, there were no academic universities. It was the Quran that gave birth to all of that, to the Arabs before Europe, and also to the Africans who had lost their sciences. They had been in the Dark Ages too, places like Timbuktu, Mali, Ghana, Songhai, Benin. All of these places came into new enlightenment. And when the Muslims, the Arabs and the African Muslims, went into Europe with the mind of the Renaissance man, Muhammad the prophet, they lit the place up. And now we have it in the United States of America, and it's lighting us up in America. Causing a renaissance in America, among us, among the African Americans first. Not only for us, but we got it first by the grace of God. We happy. And the book is for everybody, all over the world. So wherever the Quran has gone, it creates a renaissance. Now, verse 5, and I'll stop here on verse 5. Now, this is a powerful idea revealed to Prophet Muhammad. Everything in the Quran, but listen to this. Ash-shamsu wal-qamru bi-husban, and the sun and the moon follow courses exactly like a computer. That's right. Husban. We're on Facebook Live on a phone. That's a computer. All of us walk around with computers in our Apple iPhone, and they're not paying me for the commercials, so I'm getting this free. Android, Samsung, Galaxies, and all these devices we have now. But it originates, now, none of this existed now. No Apple, no Samsung, no telephones, no airplanes, no automotive cars before the Quran. No computers before the Quran. No WhatsApp before the Quran. So I've said over time, over history, over years, not over history, but over years, I've often raised this question. I said, well, statement of question. Show me all the progress on earth. Because there was a lot of progress made on earth before the Quran now. So we have to accept that. The ancient Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans. Yes, man was making progress before the 7th century, before the Quran. Okay, so let's look at all of man's achievements before the Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century. Praise and peace be upon the Prophet. So let's take everything man achieved before that. Did man have an airplane before the Quran? No. Did man have a car before the Quran? No. Were there any televisions and radios and computers before the Quran? No. So take everything man has achieved before the Quran, look at it, then look at everything after the Quran comes, and we still developing science. The Quran is still here now. So look at all of man's achievements after the Quran comes into the world, compared with all of man's achievements before the Quran came into the world. So the Quran ushered in new sciences. You say, oh, man, what are you talking about? The Quran ushered in everything. God says, see the birds poised high in the air. Now the Bible mentions the birds too, right? But in the Quran, it calls man's attention to pay attention to these birds. Say, because the Bible, Genesis said, and God made the birds and the fish in the sea and the fowl of the air. This is mentioned, right? But the Quran gets specific. Allah says, look at the birds. They've been out there flying around. You ain't paying attention. Say, who holds them up? Say, who holds them up? Who's the power to keep the birds floating? So they look. Wait a minute now. God said, now these birds are flying around. But y'all ain't paying attention. You all walking, but you can get up there in the air too. And so the Muslims started studying the birds because the Quran focused their attention. So they say the Wright brothers, and I'm answering your question about Renaissance. The Wright brothers, they say, are the ones who invented the airplane. Well, no, that's not true. The first person that invented and tried to fly the airplane, was a Muslim in Europe. I can't remember his name now. It begins with an F. But if you Google first person, Muslim person that tried flight, his picture comes up and he has wings on. And he jumps off a building. I Googled it. Yeah. The only problem was he didn't figure out how to land. And he didn't kill himself when he tried it. So it was Islam, the Quran, that introduced this. So no book that I'm aware of mentions a computer. The Quran mentioned the computer in the 7th century, long before man started investigating. And the computer is based on the binary system. 1 and 2, 0 and 1, 1 and 2, sun after 2, mating. And God said, the sun and the moon. This is 2, pairing now. And God says what? He made everything in beautiful pairs. The binary system. So, right? Binary is 2. God says, Zawjain KARRIEM. He made everything to be pairs. He alone stands by himself. YAHYA. So in the Quran, chapter 55, verse 5, is the computer. Husban. And the computer has changed man's life forever on this planet. So thank you very much for that question.
Before El-Bayan.
El-Bayan. Yes.
Is this the same? Because we build up to the Quran. The Quran is the completed message. Is this the same thing like when Allah told Adam to name everything?
Yeah.
The same El-Bayan.
Same Bayan.
Spirit.
Same Bayan. Yeah, make things clear. And to put the names, the word for name, as you know, is nature. Asma, Sama, Asma. So identify, because to name it, you got to identify it. Meaning what? You got to study the thing and see what its function is, its purpose, its nature. Then you can put a name on it based on what you study.
So the Quran was coming into play then.
Back then, telling man to use his mind.
And then it manifested.
That's correct. And then in chapter 98, there's a whole chapter called what? And Bayana.
That's right.
Making things manifest.
Clear.
So once God taught Prophet Muhammad the Quran, the Renaissance man, created the Renaissance man, he said, now make it plain. Make these things come clear. But look how long it took. Huh? So he's given a computer, but nobody has this mind yet. Man's mind has not evolved to the point where he could actually make the thing tangible. He's told, look at the birds, but his mind hadn't evolved where he could actually make the machine. Yeah, it had to grow. And what does Allah say? And we reveal to you this Quran. What? Stage by stage, gradually over time. And I can assure everybody that's watching and listening and us sitting here, there are scientific inventions sitting on the pages of the Quran right now that man has not even discovered yet. In 100 years from now, somebody's going to be on Al Islam Worldwide Ministry reading from the Quran. And say, no, that's a good question. And they're going to say, well, Allah said in the Quran 1,500 years ago. And here's the discovery now. We don't know what that discovery is going to be. We don't know, but it's sitting right there right now. So thank you very much, Zaria. Second question, Cam. Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay, so it says here, in ancient times, man thought the earth was flat, not round.
Yes.
Is there any reference to this in the Quran?
Now that's interesting. His question, if you all didn't hear it, in ancient times, man thought the earth was flat, not round. Is there any reference to this in the Quran? So we'll go to the Quran for Cam's question. Chapter 36. Cam, verse 38 and 40. Washamsu, we just read this, Zaria. So his question connects almost this first part of it. Washamsu tajri bimustaqarrin laha dhalika taqdirul azizil alim. God the Mighty spoke the truth. And the sun runs its course for a period determined for it. That is the decree of him, the exalted in might, the all-knowing. Now, I don't want to get too deep, but I'm going to reference something here, or refer something here, Cam. In this book, Signs of the Universe, I'm going to go there again. I'm going to come right back to the Quranic verse. But if I don't do it now, it may get away from me. Let's see here. Now this is regarding Galileo. You familiar with Galileo? Never heard of him? Where you study science at? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
It sounds familiar.
Galileo was a middle-aged scientist. But I'm going to read something from the book. So you can look him up. You can Google him later. But it's important based on the question you asked about the earth being flat, planets being flat, and then also about the sun being the center of the universe versus the earth. Because back in those days, people thought the sun revolved around the earth instead of the earth revolving around the sun. So Copernicus, Galileo, and others, they said, no, the sun is the center of the universe. And the church teaching at that time now, the Catholic Church teaching was against that. So I want to read something right quick now, go back to the Quran. In this book, Signs in the Heavens, on page 128. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just asked you.
I got you.
All right. Galileo sought to, and there's a lot here, so I just start with this paragraph. Galileo sought to establish his right to defend the Copernican system on the grounds that the Holy Spirit intended to teach us in the Bible how to go to heaven and not how the heavens go. This was putting a new spin on St. Augustine's warning. We do not read in the gospel that the Lord said, I will send you the Paraclete to teach you how the sun and the moon move, because he wished to make them Christians, not mathematicians. However, the argument was ineffective. It was Galileo's contemporary, Kepler, who found that placing the sun at, or more precisely, near the center removed the need for epicycles, equants, or deference. Instead, a purely elliptical orbit would account even for Tycho Brahe's very precise observations. The planets move in simple ellipses, quickly when near the sun and slowly or when further away from the sun. Isaac Newton, you heard Isaac Newton, right? All right, you heard Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was then able to provide the physical basis for this motion which Aristotle thought impossible. Universal gravity offset by conserved momentum. Muslimna. Al-Biruni's hypothesis that all bodies are subject to gravity and Ibn Sina's conviction that momentum is conserved were vindicated at last. And last quote here. Kepler's achievement is an important one, for his model features both of the elements that one who believes in a universe designed by God expects to find. A model as inherently beautiful as the hypothesis of circular motions and a strict quantitative accounting of the observations. Thus, Kepler is in the tradition of Ibn al-Haytham, Muslim, and has transcended the dichotomy of St. Thomas Aquinas' conventionalist theory of science. Now, so, motion, movement, circular, rounded. Back to the Quran. The sun runs its course for a period determined. So what is Allah saying? The sun has an orbit. The sun moves. The sun rotates. But it rotates around the Milky Way. It doesn't rotate around any planets. All the planets rotate around it. Next verse in the Quran, verse 39. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْأُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. And the moon, we have measured for it mansions to traverse till it returns like the old and withered lower part of a date stalk. Verse 40, specific answer to your question. لَلشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَنْ تَدْرِكَ الْقَمَرَ وَلَلَيْلُ سَابِقُ النَّهَارِ وَكُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. It is not permitted for the sun to catch up to the moon. This is gravity working now. Nor can the night outstrip the day. Each swims along in its rounded orbit according to the law. Now, science tells us that the earth itself is not like a perfect sphere. The planets, they're like oval, oblong shape. And when they move, sabiku, yes, it's like swimming. So the swimmer, yeah. And I learned this coming up Jefferson Street in Jacksonville in the pool, right? Summertime. You swim like this. Huh? It is how we swim? That's the way the planets move. The planets swim. And so God tells us they swim. So now, if this book is not from Allah, from God, Prophet Muhammad was not an astronomer. So how did he know that the planets rotate and revolve on their axis? They tilt in, tilt out like the swimmer. Swim. So man learned how to swim from the planet. Tilting in towards the sun, tilting away from the sun. We look up there in the sky. So the Prophet Muhammad, he's on the earth. He's looking at, can you see the planets tilting? You can't see that. Nobody had a telescope back in those days. So this is another one of these scientific proofs here that the Quran is from God, not Muhammad, because there is no way for him to know that these planets are spinning and turning through the sky and revolving around. Because I look up there at the sun, I don't see no planets moving around the sun. You got to get a powerful telescope to see this, right? Nobody had observatories in those days. Nobody had telescopes in those days. So God revealed to him, no, the planets around it. They have more around. None of them are flat. Now they say there's a flat line between the poles, north and south poles. But the planets themselves all around. And God revealed it to Prophet Muhammad. And they all swim. And they moving in the gravitational sea, if you can call it that. They're moving around in space. It's up there in the air. And they're all rotating and swimming and rolling around the sun. Now, let me give you something scientifically. And this is what it's referring to here. The Earth, now this is science, orbits the sun every 365.256 days. Now, Google this. Okay, so I don't remember this from class. So being honest, I Googled it because I knew we were having the program. So, full transparency, full disclosure, they say. I Googled it. The distance from the Earth and the Sun, 92.96 million miles. How do we calculate 92.96 million miles? Yeah, that's in the old nation of Islam, right? The moon, now this is the Earth going around the sun. So science says the moon orbits the Earth every 27.32 days. The moon is going around the Earth, okay? The sun orbits the Milky Way every 200, now listen to this. This is Allah's creation. The power of it. Every 230 million years. Every 230 million years. And it's traveling at the speed of 828,000 kilometers an hour. Ooh, Lord. So I say, Allahu Akbar. That's all we can say. And for our viewers, Allahu Akbar means what you say in English, God is greater. So the one who made, and I always come back to this, the human beings on earth claiming they God. You created something that's moving around the Milky Way 230 million years it takes for the sun to go around the Milky Way, and it's moving at the speed of 828,000 kilometers per hour. So you're right, Ahmed. Allahu Akbar. And Allah says right there in the chapter, we have put the sun on a course. And then the scientists study it and say, well, it's moving at 828,000 kilometers per hour. Now, the one who made this now, think of the power of the sun and think of the one who made the sun with his power. So hence the Quran says, no just estimate do they make of God.
That's right.
Okay, so Lazette, you get question number 3. Thank you for that question, by the way.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
You mentioned last week on engaging the mind. And my question is, was Prophet Muhammad an advocate of education?
Her question, Sister Lizette's question is, was Prophet Muhammad an advocate of education? All right, listen, I'm going to go right to, and you know I can answer that question yes and be done with it, right? But no, we want to do a little better than that. We want to see how. So in the book, Education, a Sacred Matter, by Imam W.D. Muhammad, he said, education comes from the world God made. This is Al-Islam and this is the Quran. The most important tool, now, dear listeners, and to your question, Lizette, the most important tool in the Quran is the tool of education. You asked last week, Doc, the word for science, ilm, education, science, right? Tarbiyah, teaching. So, Imam Muhammad says the most important tool in the Quran is the tool of education. Now, let me do a side note here, and I'm coming back to read what he said. Dear Muslims around the world, and I'll read that chapter. The first chapter in the Quran, most of the Muslims all over the world know this, is what? I'm going to ask you, what's the first chapter in the Quran? Title. Read. Iqra. And what does Iqra mean? Read. So, the first revelation that came to the Prophet Muhammad was Iqra, chapter 96. And it's the first 5 verses, okay? Iqra, bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqal insana min Allah, Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram, alladhi allama bil qalam, allama al-insana ma'lam ya'lam. Read or proclaim. Read in the name of that Lord who created the human being from a mere clot of congealing blood. Read, and that Lord is most generous. He who taught man how to use the pen and therefore taught him things he did not know before. Now, Muslims, how in certain parts of the Muslim world, not all, in places, some places like Pakistan and Afghanistan, we've been witnessing this in our lifetime. They're torturing women for reading, for education. And Muhammad the Prophet said education is fard, obligatory, on every male and female. Not just men, every male. So he was an advocate for public education. In fact, when the battles, when they would have wars, Sister Lizette, and if they captured enemies of battle on the battlefield, you know what the Prophet would ask them? Can you read and write?
That's right. That's right.
Yes, this is the history.
That's right.
And if they can read and write, he said, okay, you teach this group to read and write. Because most of the Arabs back in that time, in the 7th century, most of the then known world, were illiterate people. They were not, they could function. They was very successful in their lives, many of them. But in terms of academic education and all of that, they didn't have that. The Arabs didn't have a preschool. There was nothing there in much of the world. So the prophet was the advocate for public education. So he would say to the combatants, he said, oh, you learn it? So now, wait a minute now. So that says what? Some of them could read. So all of them weren't illiterate. Some could read Arabic. Some could count numbers. So he would say, okay, you're a person of letters. You have some education. So your responsibility to teach this group right here. And this is how you earn your freedom. So they were like, what? I could be. So he didn't keep enemy combatants this time. He didn't place these people. He said, you learn it, teach to unlearn it. And God says in the Quran, what? Are those who know like those who don't know? Are the seeing equal to the blind? No, they're not alike. So God is telling us it. And then Muhammad the prophet, praise and peace be upon him, in his history he would say, and this is one of Shah's favorite saying, and it's true, it's in the history, say, my companions, their hobby was knowledge. That was their hobby. You know, people's hobbies, exercise, playing. That's good, nothing wrong with that. But in the time of the prophet, his companions' hobby was knowledge and education. And then the prophet, praise and peace be upon him, he's reported to have said, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And he also reported to have said what? Seek knowledge even if you have to go to China to get it. And he also reported to have said what? Knowledge. Yeah, hold that one. Hold that one. Hold it. I love, that's one of my favorites. He also said knowledge is the lost property of a believer. He takes hold of it, or she takes hold of it, wherever you can find, which means what? We can pick up books from anybody, learning people, read knowledge from all over, every place. Don't just read.
They can compete.
Yeah, you can compete. Yeah, that's right. You don't just read the Quran and that's it. I read the Bible, I read the Torah, I read whatever I can get my hands on. I read books, business books, all kind of. So that's what the prophet said. He said the believer take hold of the knowledge wherever they can find. Now he put a caution there now on this education. Now he prayed this. He said, and look, he was a prophet. So maybe God blessed him to see one day, and I don't know, this is my imagination now. One day, the people in the future gonna have the internet. And it's gonna be information overload. So guess what his prayer was? God, save me from knowledge that has no benefit and no utility, which implies what? Knowledge is supposed to be applied.
That's right.
And then he asked the question to his companions, and he answered. He didn't wait for them to answer. He said, who are the learned? He said, the learned are those who apply what they know. They don't just consume books, and no application. Now, come on with that hadith that you about to say.
I'm saying one man of knowledge is better than 1,000 ignorant questions.
That's a good one. That's one of my favorite. The prophet said, one learned person. I got all wrapped up, forgot the time. This is good. So we got to close out. The prophet said, we conclude. He said, one learned person is harder on the devil.
That's right.
Than 1,000 ignorant worshipers.
That's what he said.
So numbers really don't count. They count, but they don't count as much as knowledge does. And the prophet, to add to that, he said 1 hour spent studying is better than staying up all night praying.
He said he did.
Huh? That's what the prophet said. 1 hour study is more valuable than standing up the whole day and the whole night praying. So we conclude on that. I don't think I need to add on that one. So I'll finish the second part of your question next week. That opens up a whole lot. So dear viewers, we hope you're enjoying this as much as we are, and we thank God that you are joining us as we share knowledge from our religion, the Holy Quran, and science. So we'll be back. Join us again next week, 7 o'clock. P.M. Eastern Standard Time, Al Islam Worldwide Ministry. You'll be able to watch this program later on this evening on our YouTube channel, Al-Islam Worldwide Ministry. Join us tomorrow for Jummah prayer, 1:30 p.m. on Masjid Muhammad on Facebook Live. That's Muhammad spelled M-U-H-A-M-M-E-D, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to our website if you like our program and you want to contribute to our program, www.alislamworldwideministry.com, or if you like, you can mail a contribution to P.O. Box 3204, Jacksonville, Florida 32206. We'd like to conclude as we began with prayer. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Our Lord, grant us the best that this world has to offer us, and grant us the best that the next world has to offer us, and save us from the punishment of the fires of sins. Ameen. We say assalamu alaikum to you all. Peace be with you, and shalom.